With no more further ado, I think we should jump right in and begin the meeting. We're going to start with a presentation on the light plan expenditures and payment in lieu of taxes, and that'll be from the director of the light plan.
Good evening. I'm going to screen here.
Very good. Thank you. Could you introduce yourself, Mr. Wood?
Yep. Hi, I'm Dave Wood. I'm the director of the light plant, and I'm going to present Article 17, light plan expenditures and payment with taxes. Before I go through this, I would like to point out that our budget that the light board approved was done in February, and it was before COVID-19. So a lot of our numbers are anticipated to change as the year progresses. And I just want to put that out there. We're going to have to reevaluate it, but I'm going to go through with what was voted on already. Here's our system demand, and you can see we're forecasting lower loads in 2020. 19 was down as well, and that's simply because of demand degree days. So we're following that forecast. So light plant total revenues forecasted for 2020 to be just over 29.3 million. The expenses are forecasted to be right around 28 million. And you can see these are revenues are the green blocks and the yellow are the expenses. The net income, which we'll get to at the end of the presentation, is also shown here. Electric sales are broken up in a number of different categories. The residential sales are about 43% of the total sales. Commercial is about 51%, shown in blue. Municipal is about 6%, and that's shown in yellow. And then lighting is less than 1%, so you really can't see that. It's really difficult to see what it is on there. Power cost categories. Here we have in the green is the energy. Price is shown below, but energy is about 44% of the total power cost. Capacity costs are about 16%, and that's shown in blue. The yellow is the transmission cost. That's about 20% total cost. And then you'll see we have fixed and other. That's about 11%. That represents fixed fees, contracts, administration fees from third parties, and ancillary services by ISO New England. So that's what's defined in there. You'll also see we have rec purchases in blue out on the right-hand side, and that's about 8% of the power costs. The generation types we have in green here. It's a grid mix. It's mostly gas, but it is a mix. Hydro, which is about 10% of the total. Landfill gas is 2%. Solar, represented in the darker green, is 9%, and the blue on the far right is wind, and that's about 10%. I did not mention that the grid mix is about 69% right now.
Is about 69%?
Yes.
69% what?
The total of the total.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Dave.
That's okay. Thanks for the question. Our cost.
Quick question on, if I may. Can you go back one slide?
Yep.
It seems like there's an incremental uptick on the solar. Are you still seeing uptick adoption there, or is that just sort of static?
No, it's not static. We are installing solar still. We have residential customers that are installing, albeit it's slowed down a little bit given the state we're in right now. But we do have a number of customers that are interested in installing. And we're constantly looking for renewable contracts as we go. And so we have some projects that are coming online in the future that will be green. But that's not. I don't want to say it is slowed down some, but we still have interest. So that's a good thing.
One more question, Dave. Tom Torpy. How has your unit price of energy varied over the last several years?
It's been pretty constant. We're actually in the middle of a cost of service study right now and rate design that we've been working on with the light board and on a third party. So we'll have a lot more detail on that question in the relative future here. Okay, our operating costs, you can see purchase power is the largest chunk. That's $19.3 million. Blue, which is the operation maintenance, that's $6.9 million. The depreciation, which is in the yellow color, is $1.8 million. And then the debt service is about I didn't write that number down, but it's not that big. Here's our capital outlay. We put 20 and 21 in here. So for 2020, we had planned on 3.5 million for capital outlay. Depreciation fund was going to cover underground replacement projects like Barker's Farm and Wright Farm Road. Those are underground systems that need to be replaced. So we're going to fund those out of the depreciation. The underground fund, which if you've looked at your bill, you'll see there's a surcharge on there. We're using funds from the underground fund to convert Cambridge Turnpike. So it's part of that big project that Public Works has been working on. We did have a scheduled borrowing for 2020 that I'm not sure we're going to end up doing now. It probably get pushed out. You can see between 20 and 21, there's $3 million of borrowing. That's for our smart meter project, but that has significantly been pushed out with the current state we're in right now. So I'm not sure we'll get to that borrowing this year, but the plan is still to have that project happen. And then
it's smart metering. I can't recall. Is that
we haven't defined that yet. We haven't defined that yet. It's part of the conversation that we're having with the light board. But we do want to do it throughout the town for a number of different reasons. But we haven't defined if it's everyone or can people opt out. But that conversation has been happening.
So this is Parashar Patel. I'm kind of curious, why push out the borrowing?
Well, simply because our plan was to bring on a consultant to put an RFP together for us, and we're delayed right now, 2 months on that. And once we get back to a new normal, when that might be, I don't know how far out it's going to be. So I don't know that we're going to be ready to actually spend the money in 2020. And that's why I'm saying it's likely to get pushed out again, which is extremely frustrating for me because we've been talking about smart meters for 3 years, and we really need them as part of our strategic plan. So it's not.
Dave?
Yeah.
One other question. Dave, this is Dee Ortner. I have a question. In your report on page 6, you have it's like the executive summary. And at the bottom of page 6, it talks about the capital outlay. And it only has $1,699,000 in it. And I'm trying to figure out where that comes from and how that aligns with this slide.
I can't answer that tonight because I don't have my booklet at home with me. But I can get an answer for that.
With what should it be on this page, or is that not, or don't you have enough information to answer that right now?
Yeah, I don't have it.
Hey, Dave, my apologies about that. When we get all the panelists lined up again, I'll explain what happened.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks.
Clearly didn't like your presentation, David.
Good.
There we go. Everything defaults to not on.
Dean, I'm loading up the panelists. Just give me a minute to explain what happened.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carl, you're muted.
Well, the attendees seem to still be pretty robust. There's 20 of them.
Dave,
Yes.
this is Dee, and I didn't get the ending. You're going to get back on the capital outlay page 6 of your report. Is
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
It
Right.
very well could be that we're looking at two different things, and
right.
that's how where the number in that book is accurate, and the number we're showing represents something different. So
Okay. How is your, based on the
I'm sorry,
current-
D, I'm sorry. We just need to take a minute to allow all the panelists. I just need to explain what happened, and then I'm sorry. We can get going here.
Okay,
Okay, just give me a minute. Thanks. Okay, Dean, I think we have quorum, and you've returned to your co-host and as Carrie too. So my apologies for that. We had a conflicting Zoom meeting that was not a webinar. It was a meeting, but it was trying to co-opt a separate town meeting that was trying to co-opt this hyperlink. So apologies, but we're back online and being recorded, and you can resume anytime.
With a small interruption for technical difficulties, I think we can return to Dee's question was being answered by Mr. Wood. And why don't you put your screen back up and we'll see what we got there. Whoop.
wait a second. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Sorry about that.
So, hey, Dave, this is Stephen Crane. Before you get going again, Dean, can I just make one comment about the technical difficulties?
Yeah, sure.
I've received a lot of feedback about the guidance that we had put out about board and committee meetings. And that exact scenario was one of the reasons why we've been trying to be careful and with our use of Zoom. And so we are working on new guidance, so there more happen. But that type of thing has always been a risk with Zoom, and I am somewhat Chris Carmody, sorry, but I'm somewhat amused that happened when I'm at the same time receiving feedback about how we need to have more Zoom meetings. So I just needed to get that off my chest. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'll try to limit my comic relief.
Okay.
So we're back where we were.
So with regard to Dee's question, we'll look into that and see why there's a discrepancy there, but we'll get more information back about that particular question.
thank you. And in that, you'll also include what you are not going to be funding now that is included on this screen.
Yeah, I mean, we have to go through all that. We have to get our timing together. That's going to take a little bit of time
Yep.
to get all sorted out. But yes, the plan is to go through that and come up with a plan. And the budget itself may have to be revised and amended, or we may just keep it the way it is and show bigger variances at the end of the year and explain why.
Do you think that your CMLP, the pilot payment will vary also?
I'm going to get to that in a minute, but the answer is
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hi, this is Chris Reynolds. Can I just ask a quick question? I'm sorry, on that same slide. So the money that you spend in 2020, the $500,000, was that for the smart meters, or is it the 2.5 million in 2021?
It's both.
It's both. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this slide shows the total revenue, which I mentioned earlier, 29.3 million. It shows the total expenses of 28.8 million, and showing for year 2020 net income of $470,492, about 1.6% return. So again, that number was big, we talked about earlier, and we have been seeing higher residential sales because people are at home, and obviously lower commercial sales because businesses are shut down right now. So those numbers are going to as well, and we're doing some analysis on that, and we'll continue to.
Thank you.
The payment in lieu of taxes is set to be $474,500. This is based on a formula that is derived by the finance director and myself, and ultimately approved by the town manager. The formula is used on the basis of previous audited financial kilowatt hour sales multiplied by 2.75 mils per kilowatt hour, or $2,750 per million kilowatt hour sold. And that's how we come up with what the payment in lieu of taxes are.
So does that, just a quick question on that, does that always sort of a malleable number right to the June 30th point based on kilowatt hours delivered kind of metrics? In other words, that number is not something you could, because it doesn't agree again with the budget book.
Right.
The budget book shows 470, 180, but this is 474. Is it just because of a run rate situation?
I'll have to double check. It should be set based on the previous audited kilowatt hour sales multiplied by that 2.75. Numbers should be the same.
No, it's not. We have 470, 180, and this is 474, 500. It's not,
Right.
not a big difference, but it's not the same.
Well, the Article 17 does show 474, 500. So there is the discrepancy between between your book and what the article does say.
And you're referring to the
Article 17
no,
in the
you're
warrant.
yeah, no, I understand that, but you're referring to the enterprise book.
Yeah, the enterprise
yes,
book on
page
page 6 that's the same situation.
It's on page 6.
Okay. This
Wait, can we go back? I'm sorry. Can I ask a question, follow up on the pilot?
Yep.
So again, that's calculated on what? On your revenues? It's a formula based on revenues?
It's a formula based on kilowatt hour sales.
Okay.
This audit. That total number is then multiplied by 2.75 mils per kilowatt hour. And that works out to be 2,750 per million kilowatt hour sold. It's a pretty common practice for MLPs to calculate it this way.
Okay.
So
that hasn't really changed much over the last 4 years then, I guess.
it goes up and down a little bit as sales.
A little bit. Okay,
but
kilowatt hour sales hasn't varied that much in the last 4 years. Is that accurate?
No, it has varied up and down, but it's not so significant that the number changes radically. So it's pretty stable, which is good for the general fund.
Yep. Good. Okay, so it's pretty okay. So the calculation hasn't changed.
No, not the way we calculate it.
Thank you.
So the growth, this is Parashar Patel. I had another question. So how, if you go back to the previous slide, the gross margin, is the net income, is that, so the total expenses include the pilot payment?
Yeah, in there.
And so what happens to the 470 that's left, 492?
That gets applied to our our fund policy that the light board adopted. It's on the website if you look at it. But that would get put back into the system in one or another.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that's worth noting, and it's never happened, but if we didn't have a return at the end of the year, by law, we're not supposed to pay a pilot. So we've been fortunate to never have that problem. I just pointed out because I should.
Wait, so you mean that if you didn't show a net income, you would not, you would be precluded from paying a pilot, or you?
Yeah, by law, we wouldn't be able to pay a pilot.
Ah, okay. Is there any danger of that happening?
No, we've never had that problem, but I just want to mention it. So
you're just scaring us. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but 2019 is pretty close, $68,000.
Yeah, that was close. But again, the forecasted, what we forecasted versus what the actual sales were significantly different because of the degree days. So yeah, that was close, but that's specifically why we do a cost of service study every 3 to 5 years, and we're in, I believe, year 4. So it makes sense to do that so that we don't run into that issue.
And it's an all or nothing. So either
not everybody.
pilot.
I need everybody to just hold on a minute. I'd like Mr. Wood to be able to provide his presentation. This is more like the context of town. They go through the presentation, and then we have an opportunity to ask questions. So please hold your questions and let him get through the presentation. I'm as much of a violator of that. I ask a question myself, but let's let him finish his presentation, because a town meeting is going to have 5-6 minutes. He's not going to have an open-ended conversation with the town. So let's let him do his presentation.
Fair enough.
Okay, so here's the strategic plan. You can find it on our website. It has all the initiatives. I showed this to the Finance Committee last year as well. The dark diamonds are things that we've committed to or have completed. The diamonds that have white stripes or black stripes in them are things that we're planning or have a target date for. And again, the example I'd use here is the smart meters. You can look 2020, we're already missed some of these target dates. Those will push out. And that's what I was referring to earlier. But for the most part, we're making some pretty good progress on this. And we're trying to keep this strategic plan updated on the website as things happen. We update it. And so I just wanted to kind of show that. And if you wanted to spend a little time on it, you could on our website. Telecommunications, also part of the light plant. We internet offerings since 2000. We've been doing it since 2014. You can see the speed ranges that we have: 35 megabits per second to 400 available. We're capable of 1 gigabit per second service to customers. We currently have, as of January, 1,500 customers. So it's been growing as we anticipated. Rates are favorable as well. And I just listed the website there if you're interested in looking at that. 2019 results grew by 26% from 2018 numbers. Again, very close to what we targeted. The 2019 revenues were 1.1 million, and the net income was $360,910. We added a network engineer, and recently, because of all the internet usage by the customers, everyone being home, we did increase our bandwidth. So we're running about 50% right now, so we have plenty of bandwidth, and it's been pretty steady for the last 2 months. So we're in good shape there. Here's our revenue by sources. Again, you can see residential is our highest revenue source. We do have commercial in there as well, some municipal, albeit not a lot, and then other revenue is in there as well. And the 2020 plans, we're looking at trying to increase by about 20%. That would make our revenue almost 1.3 million, and the net income of $277,954. We did hire a telecommunications director just a couple months ago, so that was a milestone. And we now have 4 telecommunications technicians. One of the things that we're expanding, we're actually in the process right now of adding an additional bucket truck to support the telecommunications technicians. And we're also working to increase vendor diversity to support 10G service upgrades. And we're partially through that now, but there's still a little bit of work to do there. And here is, it's a similar slide that we have on the electric side, but this shows the revenue and expenses that I was referring to, as well as the net income. So I'll take any questions that you might have at this point.
Dee has a question.
Okay.
Bandwidth increase. What did you said you now have an additional 50% capacity? What does it cost to increase that? I mean, what did you have to pay to increase that?
I'd have to look back at the exact numbers, but it wasn't significantly expensive. So that expense we hadn't budgeted in this budget for, because we didn't anticipate the traffic. But it was, I don't want to give you the wrong number, but I think a couple $1,000s.
Okay, so it's not significant, but it made a vast improvement to all of your people who are on the system.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't at the top end yet. This peak put us close to it. We had wiggle room, but not enough if one of our vendors dropped out, outage. So now we're covered in that regard.
Okay, and my other question is, what is 10G service? I mean, I think I'm on 4G on my phone. What's 10G?
It's 10 gigabits. It's very technical. It's hard to explain to people that aren't in the industry, but it's a service offering, and we're working through that.
Okay, thank you. That's enough.
Mary.
Me? Okay. Hi, Dave. You started your presentation by saying that this budget was done in February. And since then, I'm assuming that you're seeing a drop in consumption of electricity. And I also noticed that most of your costs are variable. So I'm assuming you can react to decreases in consumption by decreasing some of your operating expenses. I guess my real question is, do you see any possibility of having a negative bottom line this year, or what is your thinking right now?
It's a little early for us to say that at this point. It's a great question. I would say that we're positioned pretty well financially. We set up an emergency fund back in 2006. There's $1 million in there, and it could be used for something like this. So the residential sales are up, commercial are down. So we have to do analysis on that to figure out, what that means to the overall sales. And it's too early for us to do that at this point, because we're not at a new normal.
Quick follow-up. So is the pilot in jeopardy?
I don't think.
If you had to dip into that $1 million,
Yeah, I don't think the pilot's going to be in jeopardy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Parsha, I see your hand, Chris. You'll be next after Parsha.
Just a quick follow-up. So is the pilot payment an all or nothing? So if you happen to be $1 in the red, the town doesn't get the entire 450, 425, whatever the formula would have been? And if it's $1 over, you get the entire amount?
Yeah, as long as we're on the good side of the line, it's the whole thing. If we're on the other side of the line, that's where you're not, by law, you're not supposed to pay the pilot. We could obviously make a decision if we wanted to continue to pay that, because we have emergency funds and things of that nature. So again, that's why I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
I did want to point it out so that it was
Thank
transparent.
you.
Yep, thank you.
So Chris, go ahead. You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, there I am. Okay. I have questions on the balance sheet, in particular your unrestricted fund balances. So your finance manager was kind enough to send me a draft fund policy, and I looked on your website. I don't see where there is a fund policy other than the draft that I was presented with, so I just couldn't find it.
Okay.
But and in any event, in the draft, which is that I saw that has yet to be adopted, there's a discussion that that the Light Fund would keep an unrestricted fund balance between 15 and 25% of total operating expenses. And I sort of look at that and I compare it to what we do with free cash at the town, which runs somewhere between, I think, 5 and 10%, and that which the schools are allowed to retain, which I think is 3 to 4%. And it seems quite large to me. And when I look at the balance in the Light Fund, it's 7.2 million, 6/30/2019. I'm not sure what that balance will look like at 2020, but that's just about at 25%. If your expenses are around 28 million, 7 on 28 million, it's about 25% of your operating budget in reserves. That seems large to me. Could you speak to that?
Sure. That policy was adopted by the Light Board. I'll have to check why it's not on the website. It should be, and we'll get it there.
It's not. When was it adopted? Because the minutes for the last meeting are not up, but the prior two were there, and I didn't see it adopted there.
Yeah, I'll have to double check, but it was voted on.
Okay.
So in terms of the number itself and the 25% that you referred to, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you think about the plant value that we have, that's over $60 million. It's really not a lot of money. We have some very high-end equipment that if we had a failure, would take a lot of money to fund. We also factored into the equation that power supply is about $2 million a month. It's like 1.8, and we try to have 2 to 3 months worth of power supply in the bank, so to speak, because we transfer that money in advance so we can pay our bills on time through Energy New England. And that was some of the thinking behind why the number is what it is. But I think it would be helpful for you guys if we get that voted policy up on the website so you can see it. It makes a lot of sense.
So-
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. Going back to the depreciation, so you actually fund depreciation, am I correct?
Correct.
So there's another $4 million of funded depreciation beyond what I just spoke to on the 7.2.
Yeah, so depreciation is funded every year. It's a regulation that we follow by the state. It's supposed to be set at 3%. You can file with the state to have that changed.
3% of revenue?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that doesn't make much sense, does it? So where does that come from?
That comes right out of the bills. It's funded right out of the bills.
No, I mean the 3% of revenue. Why? That's not the way typically depreciation is calculated. Why? Is that standard in that industry?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think the reserve policy will be interesting. And for the other presenters, I'm going to be asking that same question when we get to water and sewer as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't mention that I wanted to in the beginning, it slipped my mind, is, we're in a unique period of time right now, as everyone knows. We're not charging late fees. Some people are struggling to pay their bills. We're not disconnecting them like we normally would. It's very, very different times for us. And we've changed a lot of things in the interim to try and get through this period of time. So, we won't be collecting late fees and won't be shutting people.
Right, but you have plenty of reserves to deal with it.
We have reserves to deal with it. Yes.
Yes, you do.
I just have a quick clarifying question, if I can ask. You mentioned you're hiring telecom employees. When you say telecom, are you talking about the internet, or are you talking about something else?
Yeah, I'm talking about broadband.
Okay.
So we hired a telecommunications director. He's been on for a couple months now, and we went from 3 technicians to 4 technicians, and that's simply because of demand. And we'll be able to do most of the installs without having private contractors in to help us. So it's.
I have a question. I'd like to return to the size of the reserve fund. One of the features that you keep such high reserves for is to, in the event of an emergency, you have large scale equipment that may fail and you may need to be able to dip into that and to quickly replace things and keep things going. Does the light plant carry any form of insurance on this $60 million, investment that we have in plant and equipment, such that if a large component were to fail, we would have some level of, of financial reserves beyond just literally keeping a savings account?
Yeah, we do. We do have insurance, and we have supplemental insurance. It's, as you go through a process like that, and we're in an emergency, we have to be able to get what we need right then and there. And the insurance can take some time to process. So it definitely would be a good gap for us.
It seems like a lot of money to keep for something for which you would have some level of coverage. That, person's house burns down, I assume that their insurance company is going to run in with adjusters and start getting the thing rebuilt as quickly as possible. I know that you're saying we have to move quickly. It's electricity. People need it all the time. But to keep that much reserve and call it sort of an insurance policy as a savings account just seems like a lot of, the town has up to $10 million for the entire town budget. So it seems like a lot.
Yeah. So, I've heard that before. I will say we had a third-party consultant go through this. This is very standard, in the industry. There's others that have much more than we do, but, when we built the building we're in now, we built it out of cash. We didn't do a borrowing for it. So it gets used for meaningful things.
Yeah, but it's not invested in long term because the government doesn't allow you, the rules don't allow you to do that. I assume the government doesn't assume you have this money for years and years, right? So it's a strange proposition, right, for you to keep, $7 million hanging around. And Dean, really, the number is more interesting at the total town level because it's 20 million. There's about 2.7 million in Beatty that isn't technically unrestricted, it's depreciation, but there's 20 million in all these enterprise funds that's kind of hanging around. It's, and it's all invested short term.
Yep.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Dean?
Yes.
It's Stephen Crane. Can I respond to that?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Christine, I wouldn't think it's safe to say that it's hanging around. It does sound like a lot of money to be parked, and I don't think it's fair to aggregate them because they really are, siloed. So enterprise fund reserves are for enterprise funds, general fund reserves for general fund, and that you can't really mix them and match them. So aggregating the reserves really kind of doesn't really paint an accurate picture of each function having it. And the primary function of reserves is better bond rating and lower interest rates. So it's not hanging around; it's saving the taxpayers' debt service money.
Yeah, well, but we do that for the town at 5 to 10%, right? So in water, they have 7.4 million in unrestricted, and their 10% of their expenditures would be about $600,000. So it seems like it's accumulated over time, Stephen. So it can't be being drawn down, given the sizes of it.
No, I think that's fair. Like I said, I think the light plant's a little bit different because we're running a business and we want healthy reserves and because we are not backed up by the full faith and credit of the taxpayers of the town of Concord. It's rate based, as you know. Mm-hmm. So they did, like I said, I give the light plant board a lot of credit. They really dove into this reserves policy and spent quite a bit of time doing it. And I know they did approve it. So they have, it's their purview, and they have taken a hard look, and I think they were satisfied where things stand. And Dave's right; they did get some outside guidance on what on what a right range should be.
Okay, well, I'm interested in seeing how it came out. One of the things that was in the draft anyway is something called a severe revenue loss reserve, which, again, not unlike Dean's comment, that's kind of a strange concept from reserving perspective, right? Again, in the corporate world, you don't get to put up everything you want in contingency, right? There has to be something that's really going to happen. You have to actually say that there's a loss has been incurred, or there's a contingency that's real. So some of the stuff that, that's reserved for looks like a bit of a stretch to me. But again, I'm not in the utility industry. I don't know about it. So I'd be interested to read the final policy and understand more about it.
Yeah. So, I'll get that up on the website. I will say that, the draft is not like the final piece, like that we just talked about is not in the policy. Okay. So, we went to the light board a few times on this, and they had some questions like that. And, we worked it out. So, there's a number of things that we removed and reduced. So I'll see if we can't get that up on the website tomorrow. I thought it was already there. I apologize for that.
It may be. I couldn't find it. I went in there and I looked around for it, but maybe it's somewhere not clearly. But what section would it be in?
I don't know.
Okay, I couldn't find it.
But nonetheless, if you can't find it, then it's not in a good spot. It should be easy to find. And my guess is it may not have been put up yet. So
okay, thank you.
So one further comment on these unrestricted reserves that are available. Do they give you some level of flexibility to work with entities to get into business relationships that could generate a revenue stream for the light plant? Now, I'm thinking of a couple of places in the community where panels could legitimately be put up, but do take a capital startup fee that will cost money. Could these reserves be used to, say, put canopy on the high school parking lot, or to put panels on the new middle school that's proposed? And then you have a revenue stream because you're generating a business, revenue stream. Is that the kind of thing that these reserves could be tapped for?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we talked about was the smart meter borrowing. Do we borrow the money or do we fund it out of reserves? And the example you gave about solar, we absolutely could do that. We'd want to look at the payback. Does it make sense? Or is that solar array costing us, 25 cents a kilowatt hour when we could buy it from a third party for 7 cents, let's say?
Yeah.
We have to look at all those economics too, but the answer is yes.
Okay. So it, in its unrestricted form, even though you have these ideas that it's an emergency fund for a large failure or these other things that it's there for, it could be used in an unrestricted way for business opportunities, we'll call them.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think, are there any more questions from the committee? Because I know I have at least one hand up from the community. So any more committee member questions? Okay, I have a hand up. And
hey, Dean, I'm sorry, if you don't mind just reminding attendees how to Q&A or ask a question.
Okay, so in this mode, in the Zoom application, if you hover your mouse over the lower part of your screen, you should see a little feature there with a hand that says raise hand. And if you raise your hand, and I will recognize you, and then I will unmute your mic, and you're welcome to speak. So that's the procedural way in which we can engage with the normal process of stepping up to the microphone in a hearing. So I've already recognized one member here, and I've got that mic open. So Carlin, if you introduce yourself and get your address, we can speak to your question.
Sure. This is Carlin Reed. I live at 83 Woods End in Concord. I'm also a member of the PEG Access Advisory Committee, but I'm speaking in my personal behalf. I had a question about the payment in lieu of franchise, which is located and described on page 46 of the Light Plant's Enterprise Budget Book. Dave, I've spoken with you about this just very briefly, and it represents, as I understand, thank you, for page 6, it represents roughly a transfer of about $19,000 from the Light Plant to the PEG Access Fund as part of, as a compensation, I think, for broadband of some sorts. The question I have is, you talked about the Light Board revising the budget in the future. Is this particular fee, this amount, it's about $19,000 bucks, likely to be changed as far as a transfer to the PEG Access Fund?
It's not likely to change for this budget. That's what it is. That's an item that isn't in our numbers currently, but it would be added to it.
If I may, it's Stephen Crane. This is something that we proposed this year as a new item, really in response to, response to feedback we received from the PEG, the Public Access Advisory Committee about, if we're competing directly with Comcast subscribers for broadband, and the PEG funding relies on franchise fees from Comcast, is that something that we should take into consideration, future offs, so it can continue to do its work and have a stable level of funding. So this is one of those things that we kind of, I don't say kind of threw in there, but we came up with a concept, came up with a methodology that made sense for this year, and we're going to try it out essentially.
Could I just say, this is Kate Hodges. It's covered in the PEG budget, which is later,
right?
In much more detail, including how we got there.
Okay, yeah, good. But in terms of the Light Plant, in terms of it remaining the Light Plant, that is our intent. But again, that was like everything that's going to be presented. That was before a pandemic, and that we don't know what the net outcome of is yet.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to take that down. Are there any more questions from the public? I don't see any further hands raised, so I think we can move on